Andy Austin here, I'm just making a cup of tea. Now, I'm in the attic. I figured I would do a video on meditation. There's a thing. Not something I ever thought I would find myself teaching or talking about in any public domain. However, here we are. Now, this is the Israel Regardie's Middle Pillar Meditation. Now, this comes from a book, and I would highly recommend this book. It has multiple variations on the meditation and builds up a very good explanation of it. What I don't want to do is repeat everything that's in this book, simply because Israel Regardie does it a lot better than I can. I want to give you some of the tips and hints that I've learned through my own particular practice. This is something I've been doing for years, a lot of years actually, probably since I was a late teen when I first came across the extract from this book that was sold under the title The Art of True Healing. I think you probably find it online actually. If you just type in Israel Regardie, The Art of True Healing, you will find a copy of that, because most of these things are way out of copyright date because they're so old. And so there's a lot of these things online. Now, to my horror, I reckon about 6 or 7 years ago, this started appearing on various NLPers' websites or YouTube channels. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? For a little while, there were various aspects of Kabbalah and magic that there was a bit of a crossover. At the time, the OTO, Aleister Crowley's order, had a little influx of NLPers. And as a result, a lot of the ideas from magic were taken back into the NLP scene. Thankfully, it was very short-lived, because most of what I saw being taught or replicated was it was just pretty poor, to be honest. It probably wasn't that great to begin with, and it was turned into something else. It's one of the classic things that happens when NLPers especially get a hold of something that's really good and think, oh, I know, I can make some money from that, and then rip it off and turn it into something else. So, just to give you background, Israel Regardie was the secretary of Aleister Crowley. He was the main biographer of Crowley, but also of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, and he published pretty much all of the Golden Dawn papers and rituals. All the secrets were published, and they're all available on Israel Regardie's on his books via Llewellyn Press. You'll find, I recommend them all actually. They're well worth getting. The Golden Dawn was a magical society that was largely a teaching order. Not all of the magical orders are teaching orders. A lot of them are fraternities. Golden Dawn was very much a teaching order, and so it was experiential. Lots of meditations, lots of ritual, lots of drama, lots and lots of dressing up and ceremony in order to convey a visual, three-dimensional representation of the abstract concepts being taught. Ritual operates at several levels, and one of them is exactly that. It is an embodiment of an abstract principle. When I was a student nurse, use a parallel here. When I was a student nurse, we spent the first year of what we were learning, and it was a terrible course. I've got to say, 3 years as a trainee nurse was just appalling. And the school of nursing I went to was scrapped 2-3 years after I'd finished. They removed the training license because it was so bad. But anyway, the first year was spent pretty much in the classroom and in university, and they were teaching us about concepts and telling us about things that none of us had got any first-hand experience of whatsoever. So it was impossible for me to find any application or any understanding of anything people were talking about, because I didn't know what they were talking about. They're talking about these like nursing models and these dynamic things that happen on wards. Well, I've never seen it. Now, funny enough, because of another bit of work I'm doing, I'm going over the course books I should have read when I was a student all those years ago. Now I can read them. I understand what I'm looking at because I've got a context in which to place the information. Ceremony, especially in the Golden Dawn, operated pretty much the same way. They were giving people the temple space, the costumes, the scripts that people would have are all very carefully crafted to create a certain set of impressions, but also an experience. Now, of course, a lot of those ceremonies are repeated regularly because they're dressed up as initiation ceremonies. So every time a new member comes in or goes up a grade, these ceremonies are performed. So different members of the group play different roles, and you get to move around the different roles within the ceremony, so you become very, very familiar with them. And also, a lot of these things are done from memory. Even though they're quite elaborate and quite lengthy, you have to commit the whole script to memory. So it's a very, very effective way of learning the very abstract philosophical stuff. Now, at the point of people undergoing the ceremony for the first time, the majority of people, it's too much. It's like, I can't take all this in. There's so many things happening, so many strange words and sounds being given. I didn't know what's going on. Doesn't matter, because now you've got that experience. Later on, when people make reference points, you've got something that can be referred back to. And of course, the repetition of those ceremonies by different ways of participating also further embody it. So, with that in mind, the middle pillar as a meditation is an embodiment of sorts of aspects of the tree of life, which is, where's it gone? Which is that thing there. And essentially what we're doing is building up the tree of life in your aura. Yeah, I know, ridiculous, right? Aura's nonsense. But that's the terminology that tends to be used. So essentially, rather than having those 10 Sephiroth and all those 22 paths on an abstract glyph in a book, on a poster, on the wall somewhere, I'm going to put it inside me, as a waypoint of reference. So I'm actually going to embody some of these principles. Now, the middle pillar is really just the beginnings of what can be done in this particular way. And the middle pillar is really the central piece. Being the middle pillar, of course, it's central. But there's so much more you can do with this in terms of learning the material. So, even if you aren't familiar with Kabbalah, this is a really good place to start in terms of getting to grips with a lot of these concepts, a lot of this philosophy, and what we can do with it. What we're going to do is we are going to essentially attempt to build up in our auric fields, inside our auras, inside your body, inside your sense of self would be a probably more realistic current term. This Sephiroth here, the one that we can't see because it's invisible, Dart. Tifra's down here, Yesod and Malkuth, and they have positions in the body down the middle of the body. Now, these ones here, of course, also have positions, but we're not going to concern ourselves with those just yet. If there's enough interest in this kind of stuff, I can do further videos on the meditations and how you'd use this. So these are the things we're going to be building up, and these things we're going to be focusing on by placing them inside us. Now, something that's quite important to recognize. This is not chakras. It's obvious there's a lot of similarity between the chakras of the Hindu-Buddhist system and what we're doing here, but it'd be foolish to think of these things as chakras. However, it might just be a convenient linguistic thing to make it easy to refer to them as a chakra, but they're not the same thing. What we're doing here is building up a set of correspondences with points of reference in the body. The chakras have a completely different application, a completely different evolution, and completely different set of meditations and ritual practices in order to develop those. So I just wanted to make that bit clear. This is not a chakra exercise, really. Although you'll find people using the word chakra in order to describe these as positions in the body. Now, we've got there's 5 of them. So it's nice and simple to begin with. And essentially, you're just going to be visualizing the Keta, which is going to be at the head, or the crown, Keta being crown. And essentially, you're just going to imagine your head as a brilliant, bright, illuminating, glowing, great magnificence of radiance and amazingness. Don't try and get a ball of light and imagine it in your head. Don't do it that way. That's 2 things happening simultaneously. Imagine your head, the crown, the top of your head, make your head glow, as opposed to introduce a glow into your head, if that makes sense. For years, when I was doing chakra stuff over in India, I didn't understand that doesn't make sense. Then one of the holy men I went and asked, what's a chakra? And it came out with a really good explanation. He said, you know the butterfly feeling you get when you're a bit anxious? He said, I went, yeah, there you go. There's a chakra spinning the wrong way. Okay, metaphor, I get it. I was trying to place something in that space and imagine that thing in the space. What we do is have that part of the body is the thing you visualize with the attributions you're making. That's the distinction here. And that made a huge difference for me in terms of the meditation and the experiences I was getting as a result. So Keta at the top being the crown. Now you have Darth, the hidden sphere, or Sephiroth, which is at the throat here. Typically it's said to be at the larynx. At the throat's good enough. You have Tifrath down here at the, varies. Some people say the solar plexus. So it's central. Some people have it slightly off-center at the heart. Neither is correct. However, the middle pillar is always drawn in the glyph. They're always there's symmetry to these things, so the solar plexus actually works a little bit better. However, it doesn't matter, because remember, these aren't chakras. So somewhere central in the center of the chest, whatever works for you. Then we have Yesod, which will be down in the genital area, or in the groin area, and then Malkut, which is the feet. Chakras at your feet. I know, ridiculous, right? So that's essentially what you're going to do. And then within the meditations, you're going to visualize these areas glowing. Regardie recommends in the early days you have them glowing white, all of them just white, brilliant white light, because most people can cope with that. And once you've got those visualizations sorted, then you can start introducing the color schemes. Now with each of those, as you build up the visualization, you vibrate the god name associated with that Sephiroth. And each of the Sephiroth have different god names. In the Christian Bible, we have fairly interchangeably Father, God, Lord. And there's no reason why one is used over another. There's no logical structuring to why we have three different names of a divine being that are used interchangeably. They almost like it denotes a different type of relationship, but not a different type of being. Now, in the Hebrew system, you have lots of different names of God. Now, these are all the same God, according to the system, according to the philosophy, the central religion. They're all the same God, but they're different aspects of it. The easiest way to make sense of this is that within Christianity, you're going to find people who worship Jesus, obviously. Now, if you go to a Catholic convent, you're going to see dead Jesus everywhere. A crucified Catholic Jesus around every corner. I only know that because I taught a workshop in a convent, Catholic convent. Wonderful people, but everywhere you go, there's a dead Jew. Absolutely insane. You have the church that people like my mother would go to, where you're much more likely to get people who worship the baby Jesus, because it is new hope, it's new life. Now, dead Jesus, or tortured dying Jesus versus baby Jesus, are very different Jesuses. You then have the Pentecostals, who are very much around the preachy Jesus, and so on. There's lots of different aspects of Jesus. Now, we may refer to the Christ child, we may refer to Christ the resurrected, or whatever. There's different ways we can refer to it. But we essentially know it's the same person, but different aspects of it. In the Hindu system, they actually have different names for Krishna. So you have Gopal, who is the baby Krishna, and then you have Krishna, the adult one. And so you have the Gopal followers and Krishna followers. Same dude, different parts of his manifestation. Within the Judaic system or the Kabbalistic system, we have lots of different names of God, and they're used throughout the Bible. In the westernization and the English translation of it, they were just nominalized into Lord, Father, and God. For example, in the Moses, whichever book that is, I'll say the Book of Moses. Yeah, the Book of Moses. In the Book of Moses, when he's up the top of the hill, he's having a bit of a day, and then a bush catches fire and it starts talking to him. Moses says, "Well, who the fuck are you then?" And the bush replies, "I am." There you go, I am. Throughout the whole story of Moses, the name of God is I am. Really. It's I hear this pronounced in so many different ways. Any Hebrew speaker here, forgive me for my mangling of the Hebrew. What Western magicians do as Hebrew probably has very little relationship to the actual Hebrew. Most magicians in the lodges that I've been to have never been to Israel and don't know any Jewish speakers. And essentially you copy what everyone else has taught you to say and how everyone else pronounces it. And there's a conformity that starts to happen. And actually it probably has very little relationship to the actual language. So it's a convention more than anything else. But this essentially means I am that I am, or I is what I is what this translates to. And that's very much the God that appeared for Moses. It is essentially I am what I am, which is very different when I see myself. And if we go into Kabbalistic manifestation, this is the first point of manifestation, a point of existence, but there's no self-awareness. Now we start to have self-awareness, and now we have a definition of existence. Because so I have self-awareness because a camera can't photograph itself, but I can see my reflection. That's the camera seeing the reflection, and then there's the self-awareness of existence. So that's essentially when we have I am, there is no reflecting back, if that makes sense. So A is what's up here. So what you would do is you visualize a brilliant white bright light from your head, or your head is the brilliant white light, and you would intonal vibrate A. Now some people would do this with A like that, and they would do it out loud. And it's repeated. It's a rhythmical repetition, probably about a dozen or so repetitions. Some people will silently intone it, so they would hear themselves saying it silently in their head, so they're not making noise out loud. Another way, which is much more a thelemic Aleister Crowley way, which I think is more likely to be correct, you're not hearing yourself say it. You're hearing it resonating from the universe. So essentially you're trying to create the illusion of an auditory hallucination where the universe is vibrating whatever. So I wonder if making recordings of these things, almost like it's like a choir doing it with very strong resonance, would be quite an interesting learning experience to get that sound in your head. So now you're reproducing that sound. So you're constructing it to be the universe making that noise as you're visualizing your crown here. Now, in order to help build that visualization, there is something I'd recommend you do. Get yourself a crown. I'm just going to go and get one, actually. In fact, I have two. Now these were for very different purposes a number of years ago. So this is a very, very simplistic one. This is actually made of titanium, so it's quite pricey. I can't do it. There we go. Put it on right. Because I'm doing it in reverse on the screen. There we go. Ridiculous crown. Look ridiculous. Feel a bit ridiculous too. However, what you would do, just for completion's sake, here's the other absolutely preposterous Egyptian one. This was for a particular thing a number of years ago. Also quite expensive. There you go. Should start wearing this when I go out, maybe on training courses. So the whole thing about wearing a crown is you're going to get a sensation in your head. You're going to get a sensation on the head of the crown. Now these are a little bit pricey because the way they're made, but they're not made of gold. Imagine I've actually got a very valuable crown that's got all the jewels. It's worth a fortune. It has antiquity. It has huge value. And that's the crown I wear. And it fits perfectly. Now, not only do I have a representation of extreme value sitting on my head, but I also have the sensation of it too. So that can help with the visualization, because now what I'm going to do is not only just have the white light, I'm going to have that white light also as a crown and have the physical sensation. Once if you've worn a crown through a lengthy ceremony for, say, an hour or two, your head gets familiar with this. You get familiar with the sensation. Recreating that is quite easy. Now, having vibrated that a number of times and kept that visualization going, I'm going to keep that visualization going and have a shaft of light come down from this particular experience, down my central spine to my neck, and then from that emanates Darth. And that's, again, you can do white, or you could do this in a violet kind of color. Some people will do grey. There are variations actually into which color scale you use, but violet is probably a good one to go with. And the god name here is Yehovah Elohim. Yehovah Elohim. Now, two ways people would vibrate this. Again, you can be hearing it or vibrating it yourself silently or out loud. But some people would say you spell it out. So it's Yod Hey Vav Hey Elohim, as opposed to Yehovah Elohim or Yahweh Elohim, however you wish to pronounce it. So each syllable is intoned and lengthened out. I'm not a very tuneful person if I try and do this out loud. Mine's more like a chanting. when I worked in various lodges and people have done these different rituals with these intonations, where you have a professional singer, and we have a number of professional musicians in the lodges, their performance of these things is very, very different to everyone else, let's just say. And I've got to say, one of the funniest lodge meetings I ever had was in a lodge of instruction up in Scotland, where we had one of the guys flew over from Germany, and he's a professional music teacher, and he's one of the bigwigs. He's one of the no messing around, everything has to be done correctly. And he's got a whole room full of ramshackle wannabe magicians, trying to get them to sing in tune with the intonations that he's putting out there. Oh my God, absolutely horrific. Totally horrific. It's like giving violins to a whole bunch of 5-year-olds. It was just awful and quite wonderful at the same time. So lower your expectations. If you think everyone else has got this absolutely perfect, don't worry about it. They haven't, I can tell you. So you would then maintain that visualization and now add in this one. Obviously, you don't have to vibrate that at the same time. So now, having built up this visualization, you then return back to AEA, visualize in tone, maybe once or twice. Then come down to this one, visualize in tone a few times. Then you have the shaft of light come down the spinal column to the central place, heart, solar plexus, wherever you're placing it, where you're now going to have Teferath. Again, you can do it in white or you can do it in color. And here would typically be either red or gold. Red or gold. They tend to be the two favorites, or the color of rose gold. That's another one because it's combining the two. Again, it depends on which color scales people look at. And then the god name here would be Yehovah Eloha V'Darth. Quite a long one, that. And again, vibrating it externally, internally, silently, however it is you do it, drawing out each of the symbols. Yehovah Eloha V'Darth. Come back to the first one. Revive it, so you make sure the visualization is still there. Hold it, then do the one at the throat, then do the one at the central point again, and then the shaft of life coming down through the spine to the genital area. And now we're building up Yesod, and so this would typically be purpley, violet, sometimes again grey, depends on. God name here, Shaddai El-Kai. Shaddai El-Kai or Shaddai El-Ki. I'm sure native Hebrew speakers would pronounce it very differently with that, which I can't do. Then, having built that up, you go back, revive each one, and then having done all that, you then come down to the last one at the feet for Malkuth, and that's then Adonai Ha-Eretz. Sometimes people will say Adonai Melech. These are the god names of the two god names associated with Malkuth, the lower sphere. So that's essentially it. And then you have energy flowing down through all of these, out through the feet, up outside of the body, back down through the head, and it's cycling it around again. Those that have done Bandler's training courses, especially around DHE and some of his latter NLP stuff, you'll be familiar with his spinning feelings and cycling things through. I suspect it was one of the things that made this so attractive to the NLPers who then took this from other magical orders and then reintroduced it back as a magical practice within NLP. So that's essentially the meditation. And I say, it's all outlined in this book. Now, what I want to give you, though, are some of the tips and tricks by which you can accelerate your experience of this and what it is actually, what's the purpose of this. Okay, so you're making some fancy noises. You're visualizing things nice and bright. Whoopee. What's the point of that then? Now, what you're also going to do is start to build up in your visualizations. What is Keter? So you would look up your descriptions of Keter. What does it refer to? What are the attributions of Keter? Basically, what does Keter mean? What does it represent? What are the attributions? And those are the things you're also thinking about as you visualize. Now, you may want to just do one at a time as you every day add another one in until you've got them all. Now, with Darth being the same thing, Darth being the hidden Sephara or the abyss, you would do exactly the same thing. So in vibrating Yehovah Elohim, you would build in all the attributions that Darth has at the throat as well. So you're building a very intimate connection to the attributions, the reference points, and all the rest of what these things represent. So at Tiferet, for example, it's a very easy one. This is the sphere of the sacrifice gods. It is the beatific vision. There's all of the stuff around self-sacrifice and the betterment of mankind and loving expansion, all that kind of stuff. These are the concepts that you would have an intimate working knowledge of, that you would also have going on here, and so on. You'd have to, as you learn more Kabbalah stuff, you would build in these with your regular visualizations. Now, in order to facilitate the visualizations, there's a number of things you can do. Regardie recommends use Tiger Balm or Vicks. If you're in the UK, you've got Vicks. Put some Vicks on each of these points. Be careful at the genital area, I've got to tell you, because now you're going to have a quite a strong sensation that will help you with your visualizations, and that can be quite useful as well. You don't have to do that every time. Just do that once or twice to get those sensations in there. Here's other stuff that starts to get a bit weird and a little bit silly. I would recommend you, once you know the colours and you've decided on the colours you're going to settle with, or which colour scale you're going to use. There's 4 colour scales, by the way. Get some coloured cards, preferably from the children's section of the art shop, simply because you can get that fluorescent card that is very popular in the kids section. It's very cheap to buy. It's very, very brightly coloured. Cut out a disc. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut the discs out to the relative colours and stick them in the relevant places on the body. Stand naked in front of a full-length mirror and do the exercise. So now you have a visual impression of yourself with those visual representations there as well. Another thing you could do is you can use body paint and do it that way. I've come across one example. I actually wanted to get one of these, but they're so expensive to buy. And it's a thing that's come out of China. You can find these things on Alibaba. They're absolute nonsense. And it's crystal lights. These are healing lights. And essentially, you've got a light array where coloured light is being shone through specific crystals. And they actually have almost like a laser pointer effect. So you can direct the light onto parts of the body for healing. Absolute nonsense, of course. But it did get me thinking, how different would it be to do this exercise underneath one of these light arrays where you've got beams of light that are the right colour coming down onto that part of the body as well? These are just ways of building up the representations. So now what happens if you put Tiger Balm on and body paint onto those areas too, you now have a much better representation that you can both access as a point of memory, but also it helps you build up your visualizations too. Most of the time, probably I would say for about the first year of doing this exercise, you're not going to get a lot of result. Not much is going to happen. This is one of those things that if you keep it up, you'll be amazed at what you start to find. The results of this kind of meditational work is quite different to the sort of just the trancing out type meditation. Because meditations have different purpose depending what it is that people are doing. You've got the classic mind control mantra or the technical absorbed visualization exercises about fixing points of concentration. You've got the ones built around emptying the mind, stilling time, or there's different things. This has a very interesting effect, and I can't really describe it in any way that would do it justice. But all I can say is you'll know it when you get it because of what happens in the experience that you have. So I think that's all I'm going to do with this particular one for now. If there's interest, I can build up more. So this is using the Kabbalistic system, largely built from mystical Judaism, that the Western magical system has then adopted. It doesn't have to be that way. You see, you can substitute what these actual points of reference are and substitute out the God names for something that's much more meaningful in your own life, or meaningful in your own faith if you have a particular religious faith, or in your own particular paradigm. It doesn't have to be this. We can swap them out. As long as we retain the same structure, it doesn't really matter what application we give it. We can actually, we can switch them around. If there's interest in that, I'm more than happy to do more videos on that. Do use the comment section with any points, any questions. If you're not interested, again, do let me know, because it's worth knowing. What I don't want to do is keep making videos like this and no one likes them. There's no value to anybody in doing that. So I will do more if there is interest, and if not, I'll do something else instead. If you have any requests, by the way, for anything to do with the mystical stuff, with the archetype stuff, any requests about any subjects you'd like me to cover, do stick them in the comment section, because it really helps me basically create content that it is that people want. Oh yeah, and click the like button. Always appreciated.